Good evening, everyone. Thanks for showing up. I'm Debbie Schwartz, founder of Road to College and the Paying for College 101 group. And we're here tonight with Eddie from Juno, and we're going to talk about financial aid appeals. Before we get started, honestly, Eddie and I had a little bit of some last minute hurdles to get the webinar started. So I just want to make sure everything is working smoothly. And then I also just got a quick email from somebody who had a problem logging in. So I'm going to give people a few minutes to get logged on and settled in. And while we're waiting, if you can add into the chat where you're watching from. Obviously, if you are on this webinar, you have a high school senior. If you are still waiting to hear from offers, let us know. If your student already has their offers, we'd love to know. And then it is completely up to you if you feel comfortable sharing where your student does have offers from. So, Eddie has lots of slides and information that we're going to walk through tonight about the appeal process. And we want to answer as many questions as possible. I am perfectly fine if people want to either put their questions in the Q&A or in chat because I will be checking both. Sometimes people like to put it in the chat because other people can respond to them. So either way is fine. Um, and I think that's it. I think things are moving along smoothly. I see people joining. So Eddie, do we want to get started?
Let's do it. And just a
Okay.
major shout out to you, Debbie, with the Zoom handling it so gracefully,
Thank you.
like a pro, troubleshooting so quickly for this entire audience here. Hello to all of you. I see a lot of familiar faces, or familiar places rather. I used to live in Connecticut, so I saw someone from New Haven. I used to work at Yale in the admissions office, but again, looking through the chat, there's folks from all over. So thank you for joining us this evening. And we wanted to highlight some really important uh, topics here on appealing financial aid. As many of you have already, I see a couple folks posting, you've already received offers. This is that time of year when you've gotten the acceptances. Now, what do you do with the financial aid component, right? This is the time when a lot of families are really turning their attention to the realities of paying for college. Certainly, we know and we hope that you have been thinking about this, but once you get that offer in hand, it becomes very real. It's very tangible, right? And so as you have those offers in hand, really our goal is to share with you some of the really important reasons to be able to appeal your financial aid award. Now, some families don't actually even know that they can appeal. So that's step one, right? Or a lot of families may not be as comfortable with the process because it's entirely new to you. If you are going through this the first time, then you don't know what to expect. So we want to talk about some tools and resources during our time together, especially emphasizing merit-based appeals and need-based appeals. What are some of the things that you'll need to document to showcase what pieces of information do you need to collect? And so as you think about whether you want to submit on a need-based basis or for the merit-based process, you can do both as well, I'll mention quickly, but there's different approaches to each. I wanted to share just a really helpful tool that we've created here at Juno. It's the financial appeal generator tool. I'll spend a little bit of time talking about that so you can play around with it. You can test it for yourself. Highly encourage doing so. Just share a little bit about how Juno fits into this whole process. And then please post the Q&A, your questions, and we'll spend our time as well diving into any questions that you have. Now, some of you may have been on our previous webinars before, so this may sound familiar, right? The application opens up for the FAFSA in October. You may have applied much earlier or completed it early. If so, that's great. We always encourage families to submit FAFSA early. If there are any juniors, I'm not sure if there are, if this is exclusively seniors, but for any juniors or younger, just keep this date on your radar. FAFSA goes live October 1st, and the earlier you submit it, the better it can be for particularly federal and especially state-based aid. Now, again, you'll get your student aid index. Then students are applying to college, families are applying to college. We're really at this time right now in getting your financial aid award. and then you can appeal once you receive it. And I would say you can also wait to receive a couple different offers and then see which ones are the most competitive and leverage the competitive options in order to appeal as well. Then families will decide by May 1 where to attend, and then really figuring out how to make, if you have any gaps or financial gaps in your aid award, how to figure out meeting that gap. And then tuition is usually due August or September. So during our time together here, we're going to focus on this topic, appealing financial aid. Again, you may have seen the FAFSA webinar already. You may have joined us for the Student Aid Index webinar. They're live uh, on Debbie's page on Road to College. You're welcome to go back to those as reference. And then we also have an additional one on researching and applying for student loans as well. So let's assume that you have received your award letter, right? We've seen a lot of folks posting in the chat already about that. What do you do now? It's really important to know that this is really considered a first draft, right? So your financial aid offer is an opportunity for you to explore, to both know and to explore the resources that a school has and they're able to offer to you. And then from there, what types of information may or may not have been left out, or what other additional piece of information can you pull together to showcase the both admissions office and the financial aid office that it warrants an additional review. And so if a student really wants to go to a university and the cost is just a little bit out of reach, it never hurts to ask for more. So financial offices have to allow you to appeal, and there's no consequence to appealing. So a school will not rescind the offer of admission just because you submit an appeal, just because you ask for more funds. Colleges know that tuition is expensive, housing and meals is expensive, right? There's additional factors that go into that total cost of attendance. It all adds up little by little. Health insurance potentially can be included in that, personal expenses, transportation to get to the university. It all adds up to that high sticker price. And so it is expensive for many, many families. This is something that financial officers experience day in and day out as part of their journey, as part of their job, as part of the work that they do in supporting families. And so oftentimes families may feel a little bit of tension with financial offices. And again, what I hope to communicate here, and you'll hear me echo this many times during this conversation, is your financial aid officers are your colleagues in this process, right? They're your advocates. They want to allocate as much financial aid as possible across the entire student population. And their charge and their responsibility is to do that as equitably as possible across the entire student body. So if they're not able to offer a family additional aid, and it's worth asking, the worst they can say is no. But the best case scenario is that they can actually approve that appeal. And then you may get an additional couple $1,000s, which can make a real impact and give you a little bit more breathing room as a family. So we'll talk in depth about merit-based and need-based appeals. A merit-based financial aid appeal is utilizing the student's achievements for additional financial aid, right? So this can include things like academic achievements. Maybe a student has a very strong GPA, maybe they have a really high test score, and a school wants that student on their campus as a result of those academic stats, right? We see achievements for athletics. It could be for music or some other special talent or skill that the student has that the university wants to recruit and bring to their campus. Now, we'll spend more of our time today talking about need-based appeals. And this is a result of any kind of financial circumstances within the family that then you can elaborate on in order to receive additional aid, and at least to ask for additional aid. Now, it's more to know it's not one or the other. Certainly both of these could apply. So it's not an either or basis here. Just a few tips. We'll talk about merit appeals first. You really want to be mindful and selective about who you ask. When you're going through this process, the schools that you select to appeal on a merit basis should be the ones that are in highest contention. Now, if you want to go to University A, And maybe, again, you need just a few more $1,000 to really make it doable for your family. And then university B could be one that you'd be happy with going to, and university C and D are ones that you realistically are just not going to consider for whatever reasons. Maybe you just apply to them for the sake of applying, but you absolutely are not interested based on your acceptance to university A and B. Now, if you really are not going to go to university D, and it's also not financially viable, then it's not worth appealing there because you're ultimately just wasting your time and the financial office's time. You want to be selective so you can put your best foot forward and your best effort into the programs that you really do want to attend. Now, it can be helpful for the merit process if you've gone into more than one university. And of course, you can credibly prove that you've received a better financial aid package from another school. Universities will ask for any competing offers that you receive to see exactly how much aid you've received and what the ultimate net cost is to you and your family. And so you can leverage an additional financial aid offer in order to secure additional funding if a school is willing to increase their funding. So in this example, let's say you really you got into university A and B and then C and D, but maybe C and D you're less excited about. University B is one that you could really see yourself going to as well. Maybe it's not your top choice, but you'd be happy going there. And your net cost at University B is $10,000 less than University A, right? Or they've given you that additional scholarship to make the net cost much cheaper. That's a very common reason why students will appeal on a merit basis to say, hey, I love your university. I'd be really excited to go, but I'm also really excited about this one. And this one made it a little bit more financially possible. Are you able to get close to this? That's a perfectly valid reason to submit an appeal offer. And then one additional consideration here is you have already been accepted, like I mentioned before. There will not be a change in circumstances, a change in the admissions decision just because you ask for additional aid. Make sure to ask because many other students are doing so. And so as you navigate through this process, again, it may be uncomfortable for you because you've never gone through it before, but this is very, very common. Aid officers are seeing this day in and day out at this time of year. Oftentimes they'll meet once a week, oftentimes twice a week during busy season, specifically to talk about financial aid appeals and what can be approved and what may not be able to be approved. So it's very common. It's something that's regular. It's part of this process, and you absolutely should appeal. Now, as you think about the structure of a good merit appeal letter, you want to show the institution that you really want to go there, right? It is your top choice school. If you were to be accepted and it's financially doable, financially possible for your family, then you would be thrilled to attend and you would accept unequivocally. This is a collaborative process. So again, financial officers are your colleagues. They are here to support you. They may not be able to give you what you ask based on the number of appeals that they get from all their other students, all their other admitted students. But again, you want to approach it as a conversation in working together with the financial office to make this a reality, to make your dream school a reality. You want to highlight specific reasons why you are fit for this school. If a school has a why us essay, which is very common in the admissions process, double down and go deeper into that. There is a specific mechanical engineering program that is very unique to this school, directly aligned with your interests and would serve your career in exceptional ways to be able to be part of this student and alumni community, right? Communicate those things that make a school excited about why they admitted you in the first place. And so they can see your genuine passion for actually wanting to come. Again, not for wasting their time, but for genuinely wanting to come. You want to detail any achievements or competing offers that you've received. Again, framing it mindfully and consciously, not just demanding. You don't want to be abrasive in this process because that's not going to get you anywhere. In the collaborative nature of this process, you want to highlight how good of a community member you'll be. And if you suddenly start threatening withdrawal, or maybe exaggerating or even lying about aid offers that you received, that is absolutely not a good look. Now, you should go through this process after receiving multiple offers. I saw in the chat, which is really great to see. I think someone had 3 offers, someone had five offers already, which is awesome. Now you want to be able to leverage one against another for the schools that you're really excited about. Make sure though you appeal before May 1, which is the common reply date for universities. So doing so, you want to ensure, first of all, that after May 1 that you have a spot secure in the class, so you want to submit an enrollment deposit by May 1, but appeal before that point so that you maximize your leverage that you have. Once you've committed to school already, it's going to be a lot harder. You lose a lot of leverage in the negotiations. So this actually came up with a family that I was chatting with earlier this week, and they had already approved. They had already accepted their offer of admission. This is not an ideal circumstance. Please wait. If you're waiting to hear back from more universities, wait till you have the entire decisions to know, okay, maybe I applied to 10 schools, I got into 6, I got waitlisted at 2, and I got denied at 2. Wait to hear from those schools so that you can see, okay, of the 6 decisions, admission decisions that I received, let me compare those offers so you have the full picture. And then from there, you can know how to proceed forward. Now, in the case where you might already, maybe you received your admission decision today and your financial decision. And in the burst of excitement, you're like, yes, I want to go to this school. I'm super excited. Nothing's going to change mine. And you submit your enrollment deposit. At that point, you've already communicated your excitement. You've already committed to the school. And so there's less incentive for the school to try to win you over because they already know you're coming. And so please wait until you receive your decisions. Of course, you want to ultimately choose a school by May 1, but wait until you have those multiple offers so you can negotiate and leverage one against another to be able to maximize and again, maybe get a couple more $1,000s in financial aid. What's going to be really important, and we get this question a lot as well, is who should I reach out to? So need-based appeals, so appeals based on the financial circumstances of the family, are handled by the financial aid office. Merit-based appeals can be a mix. It can be either the admission office exclusively, it can still be just the financial office, or it can be a collaboration between the two. So if there's any confusion, there's no standard practice across universities. It's just worth asking them where your appeal letter should be sent, whether it's to admissions or financial aid, just to confirm. Oftentimes schools will also have a portal online that you can submit this information to, and that just makes it easier as well. So double check, it's worth a quick call to the financial aid office and the admissions office to see where the letter should go. Now, best case scenario, like we talked about, is you'll get additional free money, things that you don't have to pay back. You could also get additional work study opportunities. So that would involve a student exchanging their labor for additional work, maybe an additional $1,000 in work study opportunity. So that is a positive outcome for the student. Now, maybe if school is not able to meet totally what you're asking for, right? So in the earlier example that I gave, University A is your top choice, but University B had a $10,000 fewer in net cost to the family. So maybe University A can't quite get to the 10,000, but if they give you 5, is that sufficient? Like, would you be able to somehow make up the rest? Is that enough, right? Or it's hard to know. That's for you as a family to decide. Could it be 6,000, 7? You have to understand where your sort of baseline is on what is doable and what is not. But that is an option where you can get a partial increase or some kind of alternative aid options. And then again, maybe it doesn't work out, and that is common where a school is not able to, after review, they're not able to give additional aid. It's worth asking if you can still appeal in future years. But if you don't appeal, you're going to be back at square one anyways with the standard financial aid offer that you received. So if you're denied again, you're back at that point anyways. It's at least worth trying. Again, don't be shy because if you're not going to be asking for aid, generally many others in the admitted class will be, and they may be offered that additional aid. Now, if you've joined some of our previous webinars when we talked about sort of the FAFSA and sort of the limitations of the FAFSA. FAFSA is FAFSA requires what's called prior income. And so, or FAFSA uses prior year income data, which is income data from 2 years ago. So if you applied for the 2026-2027 academic year, so if your child is going to be a freshman this fall, then you were required to report 2024 tax information. So understandably, that's from 2 years ago. That is, your situation may have changed dramatically since that point. It may not paint the full picture of where you are today at this point in time. So this is where a need-based appeal is critical. Financial aid will go based on the data that they receive, understanding that there may need to be adjustments. So the shift to prior year data did resolve a lot of issues, but it also created, because before it was just prior year data, but it also created new issues where, you know, nationally, for the most part, a lot of family incomes remain somewhat consistent from 2 years ago to last year to this year. So in those cases, it's just very easy because the aid package generally won't change. Now, again, there's always exceptions to be made. And so if you fall into that category where 2026 is not reflective of where 2024 income was, then you actually need to appeal and you need to provide the financial office with that extra information. They want to receive it in order to have the most full picture, to give you a fair offer, but you have to then provide it. So as we think about how need is calculated, right, this may be reviewed for some of you if you've joined us in the past, but you take the total cost of attendance, and then from that you subtract the student aid index, the SAI, and that's the number that's based on the FAFSA application. The lower your student aid index, the more financial need that you have. The lowest the student aid index can be is negative 1,500, and it goes to 999,000, a really large number. And so the difference between those two is the financial need. Now, this is the maximum amount that a student and family can be allocated for a financial aid package. So you can't be, if your financial need is 18,500, then you can't be given a financial aid package of $25,000. You can get a financial aid package that covers up to the cost of, up to the financial need that's calculated here. Now, again, as may be familiar to you, the FAFSA uses both income data from the parent side and the student side. It uses asset information, which is very different from income. Assets is calculated at time of FAFSA submission, whereas again, income is from 2 years ago. Assets are calculated at time of FAFSA submission, so it's current, both student assets and parental assets. Family size also plays a big factor into the final student aid index number. The greater the family size, the more income is protected from the family, which is called the income protection allowance. And so understandably, a family of 6 will have more expenses than a family of 4. And so through the federal methodology allows for more of the family of 6's income to be protected, which means it's not counted against them in the FAFSA application. So that's how student aid index gets calculated. We have an entire webinar that we hosted on this, so I won't go too much into detail here, but you can find it on the Road to College website. So as we talked about, income is outdated. In many cases, it can be stable from 2 years ago, last year to this year. In a lot of cases, it's not. And so the only way to let a financial aid office know that is to submit an appeal. Otherwise, they're just going to assume that your income has been stable. Assets, again, include certain components, but leaves out a lot of other financial considerations that affect your family circumstance. So for example, high medical expenses are not included at all in the FAFSA. There's nowhere to submit this information. But you could be paying maybe $500 a month for medication, right? Maybe there's a family member that has a chronic condition and you have been incurring costs over the last year, 2 years, 3 years, even more. So these are expenses that are impactful in your family's resources and how much you can devote to paying for college. And again, we talked about family size here. If you have multiple children in college, then this is a huge factor as well. The FAFSA used to consider it before the FAFSA Simplification Act. Before, if you had two children in college, then what the family was expected to contribute would have been divided in half. It's not the case anymore. So it's imperative that you let financial offices know that you have multiple children in college so that they can factor that into the adjustments they make. Now, with that, this is very common for twins, for example. So if there's any twins or parents of twins in the audience, I was talking to a parent 2 days ago who is going to have three children. This parent has a current senior, high school senior, a current high school junior, and a current high school sophomore. So for 2 full years, this parent will have three children in college. And understandably, having three children in college at the same time is much more difficult to pay for than just a single child. So you absolutely need to let the financial office know if you have multiple children in college. Now, I want to highlight a couple reasons of why you can appeal. The first, I'll focus on income or employment reasons. We've talked about some of these already as we go through the next 3 slides here. But if your income has reduced since 2024, then you need to let financial offices know about that. Because again, their basic assumption is that income is going to remain consistent. Now, if it's not consistent, if there has been a change, then they want to be able to account for that. You will have to document any reason that you submit an appeal for. And so financial officers can use professional judgment in order to adjust your financial aid package, but they are required by the Department of Education to provide a valid justification and evidence for that. And so a financial package will not be adjusted unless you provide supporting evidence of your claim. So in the case of income reduction, you might need to provide pay stubs and show how that's different. If there's a letter from your employer detailing maybe a company-wide reduction in salaries, anything that you can show to demonstrate that your income is in fact different. Now, if there's been a job loss, that's a huge change in income. Now, this has to be involuntary. So resigning from a job may not necessarily count and oftentimes does not. So if a parent chooses not to work when they have been working previously, then that is not as strong of a reason as if a family member being laid off from their job or terminated from their job. So in case of involuntary job loss, that is going to be considered very, very closely. Now, some families may also have a one-time change in income. So, this can be maybe receiving an inheritance in 1 year. Maybe you received an inheritance in 2024, but that's not reflective of 2025 and 2026, right? Aid offices will look at 2024 and say, wow, you had maybe a very large income that year. And if that's not consistent over time, you need to let them know. Otherwise, again, they're just going to assume that that is your income. So document that, showcase that, right? It could be maybe you sold a property, another property that you had. Maybe you won the lottery, if we're being very optimistic. So any kind of one-time income that's not standard, you want to let aid offices know. If there's been any kind of reduction in child support, similarly, you want to provide that documentation to showcase that change in income. Now, we talked about unexpected medical expenses already, particularly any out-of-pocket expenses you have that is not covered by insurance. This is very common. You want to collect all of the bills that you've incurred up to that point, showcasing how much you've had to pay out of pocket. If there's any chronic conditions that you constantly have to pay for, again, whether it's ongoing medication, ongoing health consequences that requires some consistent therapy for, right? All of that you want to make sure to include because it's currently not asked on the FAFSA. If you are caring for an elderly or sick family member, taking on primary responsibility for their level of care, you absolutely want to include that as well. And so similarly, any kind of high fixed expenses that you have, anything that's going towards non-discretionary expenses though. So document that, make sure you have you collect all of what you need to prove your point to the financial officer. And then finally, as we mentioned, if you have a sibling also enrolled, if the student has a sibling also enrolled in college, if there's a parent as well who's also going to college, then you want to showcase that the family is paying for 2 people within the family to go to college. If there has been any change in family size, as we saw from a couple slides ago, family size plays a huge role in the student aid index number. So if there's been, if your family has grown by one since then, or by however many, if the family can also grow by caring for elderly grandparents from the student's vantage point. Now, this can vary. It's a little bit more nuanced than just saying a grandparent is living in our home, and so we're claiming them on our taxes. Uh, so it's not that simple. There has to be some sort of demonstrated need, and the family has to provide more than 50% of excuse me, of expenses for that relative in order to be able to claim them. Now, if that can be the case, sometimes it's not, because if a grandparent has their own income through Social Security or things or other kind of retirement income, then that will not count. So I want to be mindful. It's a little bit of a nuanced conversation there. Um, and then, so on a more somber note, unfortunately, if there has been a death in the family, then clearly there's been a significant change and disruption within family dynamics and likely the financial circumstances of the family. And then in the case of divorce or separation as well, if that happened after the FAFSA was already submitted, then you need to notify the financial office. If the school uses only the FAFSA and not the CSS profile, then only one parent will be required to submit their information. And it'll be the parent that provides more than 50% of the financial support for the student at that point in time. Generally, it's over the last 12 months. But if it's a very short period of time, it'll be the parent who provides more than 50% of the financial resources. Now, as we think about initiating the appeal, you want to start by reaching out to the financial office. That's point one. Again, maybe they'll direct you to admissions for a merit-based appeal, but it's always easier to just start with financial aid and just to learn about the process from them. Now, aid officers do have the authority through what's called professional judgment in order to make adjustments based on documented evidence that the family provides. They'll be able to review. Oftentimes, they'll confer as a committee in the financial office and then notify the student of any changes. If there are changes, you'll get an adjusted financial aid award, and then you can use that as comparison. If you were denied, again, unfortunately, this does happen, then ask if it's possible to review in the future. Now, as you think about going through this process, you want to start first with an appeal letter. This should state the reason for your appeal, whether it's a need-based appeal, a merit-based appeal. You can combine the two as well. Let's say if the financial office handles both, you can combine it into one letter. But you have to document what has changed since your original FAFSA application or CSS application. Without any changes, then it's highly likely that your appeal will be denied, because financial aid will have reviewed it already. If there's no changes, they're just going to say the same thing. Gather any supporting documents you need to really prove your point and to show financial aid that evidence that they require. Now, this could be tax returns, W-2, pay stubs, bills that you've paid, right? A lot of the documents that we talked about in the previous slides. So you really should appeal if there is any kind of concern. This is a common process, as I've been mentioning. Schools have to require you to appeal, and then they have to, aid offices have to review, and they have to actually consider those appeals and any adjustments they may be able to make. So consider that, because again, there is no guarantee that it will be successful on your part, but if it's not, then you're back where you started anyways, and the worst you'll hear is no. If it works in your favor, you could receive partial aid or even the full amount that would really help make it a reality for the student to attend. Wanted to highlight some changes that don't count as we sort of near the end here. Changes or reductions in your 401k value doesn't count. Any kind of reduction in the value of your investments will not count as a valid reason to appeal. That is the inherent risk that you take by investing in equities, for example, or in real estate. So that won't count as a valid reason. If a parent refuses to contribute to the student's education, unfortunately, this happens every single year, and we communicate with families each year where this is sadly the case. An unwillingness to pay is not the same as an ability to pay. And so if one parent refuses to contribute, that places the student in a particularly difficult circumstance because both parental income and assets are generally considered. Again, if parents are divorced, then only for the FAFSA, only one parent's information will be required. But if the school also accepts the CSS profile, then that parent's information will also have to be included. Now, that information can be waived if there has been abuse at home, if the student or a parent is put in an unsafe position in reaching out to the other biological parent, then the family can request a waiver, a CSS waiver form. That states this. There is going to be some documentation that's required as well. But if that's approved, then the other parent's information will not be requested, and the college will not pursue that other parent for their financial documents. Now, if parent is unwilling or not able to borrow Parent Plus loans, that's also not a valid reason to appeal. Similarly, a lack of creditworthy co-signers will not count as well. Now, I want to spend just a few quick moments talking about this. I'll share just a little bit about Juno, and then we can turn to the Q&A, which is, I think, both in the chat and the Q&A section. So we'll make sure to monitor both. Quick note here is that we just created this tool fairly recently. It's completely free. I encourage you to try it out, play with it, put some different scenarios, put your own scenarios in here, especially if you've received multiple offers. We've created this financial aid generator tool that allows you to input some information, very quick to do, and it'll actually draft an appeal letter on your behalf. From there, of course, you can modify it, you can edit it as you wish, but it'll be a first draft for you. Now, what's helpful is, again, you'll be able to do this whether you are a rising first year in college or you are already enrolled. It works across the board for all students. You can submit whether you want to do a merit appeal or need-based appeal. You can also include, like we talked about the example, multiple children in college, as well as a dependency override. So I won't get too much into that, but that's whether a student will be able to be considered an independent student for the purposes of the FAFSA. So many different scenarios here that you can try, and you can play around with it and try different scenarios. But you'll enter details about the school you've been admitted to, and then the letter will actually pull. So let's say, again, there was I saw in the chat someone who received 5 different offers. You can list all 5 of those schools here, the total cost of that school, any kind of merit or grant award that you received, the loan amount, work study, and ultimately what you see on the right here is what you pay, which is the net cost. This is the number you want to focus on, not necessarily the grant money or the scholarships, but the net cost. Because a school could be more expensive. Let's say Duke University in this case is 90,000, but what if they only gave you 30,000, right? So if we compare the Duke grant of 30,000 in this hypothetical scenario with Ohio State's 12,000, then clearly Duke gave more financial aid. But the net cost of Duke is going to be much higher still. The net cost is going to be 60,000 compared to 48. So Ohio State is actually the more financially feasible option in this scenario. Now, it could be the case that a school gives more aid and it's ultimately cheaper to your net cost. What is generally a good rule of thumb to think about is the appeal that you draft should be similar types of schools. So if you're comparing between a public university and a private, that's not the best comparison point just because funding structures are so different and the way financial aid is given out at public schools versus private schools is very different. So Duke wouldn't be the best comparison point for Ohio State, but University of Michigan might be. And sorry to invoke the rivalry there, right? But maybe Michigan is giving additional grant aid, and that's able to make the cost cheaper for your family. So then you then go to Ohio State and say, actually, from a pure school, I've gotten a better offer. Are you able to give additional grant funding? It may or may not work, again, depending on the resources Ohio State has available. But all of these pieces of information, you can let us know. You can submit it into the tool, and it'll draft a letter on your behalf. For the sake of need-based appeals, the process is a little bit different, right? Because it's circumstantial based on a job loss, based on reduced hours, based on high expenses that you may have incurred that were not reflected. So you can include those different reasons. And then this is the outcome that you'll receive. A letter that you can download and then, again, modify or send directly. What's also helpful is just the suggested attachments. a list of to-dos that you need to compile and put together in order to make it easy for you and make it easy for the financial office to have all the information that you need. That way they can process the information, they can look at it and then review your financial offer in the hopes of increasing your aid award. If you need to do this multiple times, it's very easy to do. You can just click the create another appeal letter. And so you can do this for many different universities simultaneous, or one after the other, rather. Now, just a quick note here, final note on Juno and sort of how we fit into the process, particularly as it relates to the huge changes that are happening in federal student loans. So for anyone in the audience, parents or students, if you have a current college student, so a college freshman or older, then you can still borrow under the old terms of the PLUS loan. The Parent Plus is a federal loan option available to parents to help pay for the cost of their children's education. So for anyone who has been enrolled in college before July 1 of 2026, then you can ignore everything that I'm about to talk about related to the changes. So you can still borrow, as you see in the bottom right, you can still borrow under the current policy, which is up to the cost of attendance without any lifetime limits. Now, the student has that, the family will have had to take out a federal direct loan in order to qualify to be granted the legacy exception, or what's also called being grandfathered into the old terms of the loan. Now, for any high school seniors and every student thereafter, the Parent Plus will be limited for parents who are borrowing on behalf of their students. The new policy caps annual borrowing at $20,000 per year, with a lifetime limit of $65,000. And so a family might borrow 20,000 freshman year, 20 and 20 sophomore, junior year. And in that case, you're only eligible for $5,000 senior year. So this is a pretty dramatic change from previously. Really, really important for families to know, because this may impact how students ultimately may choose to enroll, whether they have the financial resources available to make that school a reality, or whether they have to borrow a lot at really high interest rates, which makes it a lot more difficult to justify if the loan that you have to take out is going to be that much more expensive. So again, as we think about the work that Juno's done, effectively what we do is group negotiation for student loans. So think first and foremost, how much you can maximize grants and scholarships. Make college as cheap as possible. Get funding from the federal government through states and through the institution itself. This is why we created the appeal generator tool, so you can maximize the aid from the institution itself. And that then would further reduce any amount that you might need to borrow. Now, what we do is, if and only if you then need to borrow, then at that point, you can join the Juno membership, which is completely free. We never charge families anything to join the group. There's no place on our website to include credit card information. So everything we do for families, for high schools, is completely free. And we ask families that if you're able to join the group negotiation before April 30th. Now, what this allows us to do is we then run what's essentially an auction with a lot of the lenders that we're in conversations with in the late spring. And then the one that provides the best rates and terms, we then partner with them to be able to offer that negotiated deal to the entire membership. And so I'll just speak from personal experience. I'm currently in grad school right now. I also I'm on the team here at Juno, but my introduction to Juno was actually as a grad student. I'm pursuing an MBA degree, which unfortunately is a very expensive degree. So I'm feeling this very acutely. Because I have to borrow a lot in order to pay for my grad school. So I heard about Juno through a classmate, and I went through the process. I was able to get a lower interest rate, 1.5% lower than what the federal rate was. And I'm saving, quite literally, this is not an exaggeration, I'm saving tens of thousands of dollars over the life of my loan, because I was able to get a much lower interest rate. And so that's our goal, and that's the purpose of why we exist. If you are in the position where you do need to borrow additional funds, and a lot of families are unfortunately going to be in this position because of the federal restrictions that are now going to be in place starting July 1, many families are being forced into the private loan market. And so if that is your situation, then it's important for you to explore the best options on the market and see what's available. Now, there's no commitment. If you do join the group, again, it's totally free. It's effectively a mailing list where you input a couple of pieces of information, and then we will then email families on June 1st or around June 1st to share the negotiated deals with you. And so if that makes sense for your family, then we just want it to be an additional option. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to end up taking out a loan through Juno or anything like that. But you can just explore it as a free option, and that's all. There's no cost, like I mentioned, there's no credit check at all. You're not obligated to take out a loan. What's really important as well is if you have any additional questions, you can reach out to our team for free one-on-one support. Um, I've already spoken with many families that I've alluded to already, and we do this all throughout the rest of the year, especially a lot over the summer. I'd be more than happy to meet with you if you have specific questions about your situation, or you don't even know where to start. That was the last conversation I had with a parent. Like, they don't even know what to do. They just know that college is expensive. So what are some of those options you have? If you do want to sign up, you'll get the slides here, so you can sign up using the link that you see on the screen. Again, it's totally free. It's just an additional option. So we'll pause there and then turn our attention to questions.
Okay. Well, thank you, Eddie. I've been typing as fast as I could, trying to answer as many questions, but they just came fast and furious. So we'll try and answer some of them. But this is a basic one. I saw that this is recorded and the link will be sent tomorrow for people who kind of joined late or just want to watch this again. So don't worry about that. And in all honesty, we will send a copy of all the links that were shared tonight too. So in
Yep.
case you didn't catch them or anything like that.
And the presentation slides, exactly. Like
Yes,
you'll
yes,
have access to it all.
yes. Okay, so where to start? I guess you did mention this, Eddie, but I guess it's worth repeating again or just discussing. There were several questions about students that might have had offers from a private school, private universities, and public, and parents asking if they could use the awards from the private schools to appeal to the public school. And I mean, I know you would say kind of implied that they might not kind of get as much as they would hope because public schools just have different budgets that they deal with. But do you think it's still worth trying?
I think it's still worth trying. Absolutely. So if there are no other reasons, again, you can go through those. We compiled about 12 different reasons you can appeal. If none of those apply to your situation, you absolutely should still apply, even if it's comparing a public versus a private. Public schools just have less financial aid to give out in the first place, and oftentimes it is um, it is toward students from that come within the state. Um, it's worth trying. I just want families to at least know the general prospects, is it's going to be less likely. But if the net cost is cheaper at one of the schools, then it's absolutely worth doing a comparison between the two. And so I actually just saw something come in through the chat that I'll just speak to. Like, can you ask for out-of-state tuition at an in-state? You could. There are schools that there are some
Just to kind of, I think it's really, can you ask for, I wasn't sure if you said you read it properly. Can you ask for out-of-state tuition? Can you ask an out-of-state student, can they ask for in-state
in-state
tuition?
tuition.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can certainly try. I'm less optimistic about that as well, but there are some universities that have the ability to qualify for in-state tuition,
Mm-hmm.
especially if your major is not
I was
offered
going to say on certain majors.
in
Yeah.
your home state. Um, I was just talking with a family about this about UNH actually, because UNH offers New England students overall that in-state option if their degree or their program is not available in their home state. So absolutely, that can be a reason. It's going to be less common just to be granted in-state tuition if you're out of state. But the other point that I'll make here is that there are schools that will allow you to claim residency if you've lived for a year if the student has lived for a year in that state. Now, it can vary. Some states are notorious in making it difficult to claim residency. California is especially difficult. But there are other schools that want to attract students. And so this is sort of this is a benefit in exactly what you're asking for, of the ability to then get in-state tuition if you're coming out of state. It does require you to check the policies, the residency requirements for each university, each public university that you are looking at, but it is possible to claim residency after a year.
So somebody is asking that they have twins in college. The twins, going to be in college as freshmen, and they're not sure if that was considered or not, during the process. So is it worth appealing on that basis?
100%. Please appeal. Because you're going to have two students, at least. You may have other children as well, but you are going to have at least two students in college for the duration of 4 years. So it's imperative that you appeal, and appeal for each child. Now, your children may end up going to the same school. You still need to appeal for each one, or certainly they may end up at separate universities entirely. But either way, you still need to appeal for each child and go through the financial aid appeal process, the need-based financial aid appeal process. Let the universities know that, because otherwise they're not going to know. So the more information you can give them, the better, the more informed decisions that aid offices can use, and then adjust the financial aid package accordingly.
And let me just add that if you did not receive any need-based aid, it doesn't mean that you still can't apply for need-based aid, especially if a lot of the things that Eddie reviewed changed in your situation. So, if obviously you had a change in your employment, or the medical expenses, or a change in household size. Under the way your FAFSA was processed, you might not have gotten need-based aid, but that doesn't mean that with this new information, you then, might be eligible for need-based aid. So don't assume
Absolutely.
because you received none that you still can't apply for that type of aid.
Absolutely. And just to double down on that, yeah, if some of those reasons don't apply to you, right? But the the number of children in college changes in the case of this twins. Like absolutely, you may actually end up seeing a great a need-based financial aid package, because you have to pay for two children instead of just one.
Okay, so this was asked a few times in few different ways, but basically somebody's saying, what if you appealed for merit aid already and they actually increased the merit, but it's still not enough? Can you ask for more? And that actually, people ask that in a different type of way, but they basically said, can you go back and a second time?
Yeah, you can. Now the if there's any other information, it's worth trying to include there, even if it's, again, awards that you received at the end of the year or towards the end of the year. And I mean, like, school-based award, community awards, regional awards. Maybe a student, was rated the top debater in their county or in the state, right? Especially for merit-based appeals. Any kind of updates that you can provide and say, we really appreciate the offer you've been able to give us up to this point. Um, it would, like, whatever amount that you would really make it a reality for you, you want to be upfront and honest about that, to say, this is what's really going to help us, commit, if we're able to get just a little bit more. Absolutely, you can request a re-review.
Eddie, I don't know if you mentioned this, but what's your opinion about when should students accept? Meaning, like, should they kind of wait to the very end? Because sometimes schools come out with or more willing to provide, more appeal money the closer it gets to a deadline, and they're kind of juggling their yield.
Yeah, so this is there's I'm sure you're thinking about this as well, right? The notorious situation that happened
Well, you should
last
share it
last
because
year.
these parents, weren't necessarily as aware of what happened because it wasn't the year that their student went to college.
Sure. And I don't mean to speak about, I'm mindful because I don't want to like
We don't even have
speak
to
poorly
mention the
about
name of the
one, yeah,
college.
particular
Yeah.
university, but this exact thing happened, as you were describing, Debbie, where a university in the last couple days,
Day.
last day, yeah, the last day, suddenly came out and was offering very significant merit scholarships to students who had not yet confirmed their enrollment. And and it sort of created obviously a huge uproar because students who had already committed then weren't getting that same level of scholarship. Now, I'm not sure what will happen this year. It can be worth, to be honest with you, it sort of opened up Pandora's box. This year may be a bit of a mess. So it can be worth waiting. You're not obligated to reply before the deadline, right? Generally it's May 1st, but for most schools. So there's no obligation to submit beforehand. You can wait and see if a school is desperate to get more students in their class. Maybe a lot of students did not enroll up to that point, so they need to fill their class, right? And so they're willing to do whatever it takes to to meet their enrollment targets. So this year, it could actually be a viable strategy. Again, I don't want to open up the situation to more craziness, but unfortunately, I think that's just the reality of what happened, and we will see if more schools end up doing that
Hmm.
this year after losing students last year who had already submitted their enrollment deposits before the deadline, right? So
Yeah.
it
And what
is a situation that students
And what
can
happened last year
leverage.
was on the scale that it happened was kind of the first time and a little larger than normal. But honestly, in previous years, I have seen maybe lesser selective schools or kind of at the last minute be more generous than earlier in the season. So there's no harm, right? There's no harm in waiting and deciding. Okay.
Correct. I would say just one quick
Yeah.
note on that. If
Yeah.
you need, if there's a change in the need-based process, though, I would encourage doing that early,
Mm.
because
Just
the
because it
change
needs to go through more review.
it
Yeah.
needs to go through review. The merit process is different, and that was the situation we were just describing. Just I want to clarify that to the audience. The students were given more merit aid because the school needed they were very low on their yield. But the merit process, if you're going to go through, if any of those scenarios apply to you, you should go through that process. Give yourself time, give financial officers time to review because they do have to meet as a committee, deliberate, and then
Right.
ultimately make that decision.
That's a good point. Um, this was also asked a few times. Somebody was asked, do you think it makes a difference if they actually attend Admitted Student Day and they're appealing? Somebody else is asking, will it help if my student shows more demonstrated interest?
Great question. It can, yeah. So there are a lot of times students will actually meet with financial officers during that admitted student those admitted student days to discuss the financial aid award, what can happen. It does matter for schools that consider demonstrated interest. It's going to be less important for schools that don't consider demonstrated interest at all, because those tend to be the most highly selective institutions. So in those cases, it's less relevant. But yes, attending admitted student days can be another form of demonstrating interest.
Somebody is asking that, and this is related to a CSS profile school that kind of uses, that might be using the value of home equity in the process. And
Mhm.
they said that they felt that the value of their home had increased a lot, just from market value, but they just aren't in the position to actually pull the value out of the home. And they've had other increased costs related to the home, taxes and insurance.
Yeah.
And they're wondering if that's something that they can use to appeal with, knowing that the school may have used the value of the home equity as part of the formula.
Yeah, it's a great question. It, I would say it would matter. I would encourage you to try to appeal
Mm-hmm.
on that basis. Now, the FAFSA doesn't use primary residence at all. So this question is only relevant to CSS profile schools. On the FAFSA, you should not include the value of your home, your primary residence. And if you have, then you need to go back and correct it or reach out to the financial office to let them know that, because you would be over-reporting your assets at that point, or if you've done that. Now, for the CSS profile schools, yes, if there's been a significant change, as you've identified, increased taxes, there are very few schools, and typically and I mean, when I say few, like literally less than five, less than the fingers on one hand, that will completely exclude home equity on you that use the CSS profile. Um, so the situation that you described is worth appealing. Now, the degree to which financial aid offices would then be able to consider that is going to be dependent on the volume change or the percentage change that you were highlighting, but it is worth submitting that additional information.
There's been several questions about who the letter should come from, and I will actually separate out. I think you can discuss maybe who should write the letter, and who should be involved in writing the letter, and
Mhm.
who should the letter actually, come from, letter/email.
Yeah, absolutely. So for need-based letters, this can be a combination of either the student and parent. Oftentimes, there are some circumstances in which it does make sense to come from the parent. So, for example, like if another sibling has a chronic condition, right? And like we kind of talked about those high medical expenses. Oftentimes, the child that's going to college certainly knows about the situation, but may not know the details, right? Exactly what the medical bills are. So oftentimes that some of those situations make sense to come from the parent on the need-based side. Merit-based appeals should come from the student, all right? Because this is the student who's already applied to the university, already communicated why they love that university in their application. You're reiterating all of those great aspects and why you would be a great fit for the school. Again, oftentimes they are reviewed by admissions, and it can be a combination of admissions and financial aid too. Um, but that's where the student has the opportunity to state their case again, and to reiterate their accomplishments, to reiterate why they love that school. So really the merit-based appeal should be coming from the student. The need-based appeal can come from the student, a combination of student and parent, or just the parent.
But let me share that, even if it's still coming from the student, it doesn't mean that as a parent, you can still be involved in making sure it's written well
Absolutely.
and the right things are emphasized.
Absolutely.
Um, Here's a good question, and again, got this in different forms. This particular person is giving an example and say, how do we know if two schools are considered competitive? Or somebody asked me, how do I know what like is considered a peer institution?
Yeah, great question. So schools themselves disagree on who they consider a
Right.
peer, right? Like, oh, uh, there are aspirational peers and then not. Um, but so there are, I believe, I'd have to check if the common data set actually has this information or not. In
It
terms
does
of,
not. It does not.
okay,
It's a little. So what I actually tell people is Google the name of the college and actually write, let's say like Tulane peer institutions. Sometimes actually the college itself in their website, like someplace in like the, you know, um, executive information, they actually might have discussed
might name
peer
it, yeah,
institutions. And so it may show up. Um, but the other trickier place to look is in the iPads information. That's where but I wish I could explain it like simply, but but they have a report that you can run that shows peer institutions. But I would definitely start out by Googling.
for sure.
And I mean, you could look at things like, comparable admission rates. But I mean, my personal belief in this process is if your student is accepted, that's great. they got an offer that's, of some scholarship money or need-based aid, that's great. There's no harm in appealing. You just want to be as smart as possible to put the right information like forward because nothing is going to be taken away. The worst case is that you stay the same as when you started the process, and the best case is you get
Yeah.
something more. There was a good question earlier about do you have to appeal every year?
Uh, yes, it can depend on the type of appeal. So for merit appeals, universities might actually give renewable scholarships. And so make sure you understand if let's say the school gives you a $20,000 scholarship, is that just for freshman year or is that for 20,000 every single year? That's a critical question to ask. On the need-based side, yes, you do have to appeal every single year. Need-based appeals is, or excuse me, the you have to apply for FAFSA and CS, you have to, for financial aid, so the FAFSA and CSS profile, if a school takes CSS profile every single year, and it's meant to account for differences or changes in income in family circumstances. I saw a couple similar types of questions in the chat as well about like I had maybe a really great year in terms of my salary in 2024, but it declined in 2025 or vice versa, right? Whatever the scenario is. This is why you have to apply every single year. It's to account for that. Now, again, there can be reasons to submit an appeal after that initial aid offer is presented to the family. So if you had a very strong, this is very common for families who parents who work in sales. Sales can be incredibly cyclical year to year, or not cyclical, excuse me, variable year to year. And so if maybe you had a really great year in 2024, and that's not indicative or representative of where the last 2 years have been, this is why you have to apply every year. And so it's meant to accommodate any of those differences and account for those differences in the um, financial aid offerings.
Um, oh, there's a question about wait lists. What if their student is on the wait list? Is there any chance that if they were accepted, that they might get merit scholarship money?
This is a great question here. So it is less likely.
Mm.
And I know that might be tough to hear. Generally, the scholarship funds go to the students who would be admitted either in the early decision round, early action round, or just admitted in the regular decision round. It's going to be rare to see a student off the wait list get merit. It is possible. I don't want to completely discount it. But generally, if a student is offered a spot off the wait list, they have a very short time frame to accept that offer of admission. So usually it can be like 48 hours or 72 hours. Um, Again, it can be worth asking. Never hurts to ask, but colleges will expect a quick turnaround. And coming off the wait list, it's going to be less likely than just a regular decision admit.
So there are a few questions on this situation, which it's probably coming up more and more these days, as schools might have accepted students, but they're not starting until spring, or students
Mm.
are accepted, but they're accepted into like a study abroad program. Um, how should appealing work if a student is in one of those situations?
Yeah, it's a good question because I saw this one come through with talking about Verto, I think,
Yeah.
and I actually when I both worked in admissions and I was a college counselor at a private boarding school in New England, and so I had this situation happen with one of my students who was accepted to a university, but they had to spend their first semester away doing this program before they would be able to come back, and so in those cases, it is again it's possible usually I don't mean this to come across in any negative way. Students are usually offered those types of alternative options to be able to still come to the university, but it's not the primary priority admission option. So a student is going to be more likely, similar to what I was sharing in the last example, to get aid in if they're just admitted outright to start at that main campus in the fall than they were to be if they were to be it is sort of admitted, but with a required study away program. Now, again, it's still possible, and especially from the need-based standpoint, absolutely, there may be a year because you apply every year, you could qualify for need the next year. From the merit side, it's going to be a little bit less likely, not impossible, but less likely than a straight admit to the main campus for fall admission.
I can't remember, Eddie, honestly, if you mentioned this in the slides, but there were a few questions about should, in sending an appeal, should they ask for a specific dollar amount that they need?
Yeah, great question. So it is especially helpful to have a comparable offer, right? And to say, are you able to get close to this in the ways that we can realistically make it work? Because that makes it very tangible and real for the university to say, do we have it within our budget to give you an extra $10,000? Now, of course, you can ask, right? And I would say like within a reasonable range, I think is appropriate to ask. If you are, let's say you're offered no financial aid, no merit scholarships, uh, it would be a little bit un very, I guess, unlikely or unheard of to request like $30,000. Right. So there's a level of understanding and feasibility within what a school can budget for, especially as they think about the entire student population that they have. So I would say within some level of reason, it's appropriate to ask, but just be mindful because asking for too much is again a school will it's not likely if they didn't offer it to you in the first place, it's not likely that they can realistically do that. But there's some wiggle room if a couple of $1,000s, I would say probably close to 10 is what I would consider really the max in terms of
Yeah, I would
what might be
consider like
feasible.
up to 10. If you want to state a specific number, then that's fine. Over 10, it may not be as smart. Um, A parent is asking that they have multiple, or they will have multiple kids in college at the same time, and that's one of the reasons why they want, or actually they already did appeal, and the school is asking for evidence of a bill to prove that the other students aren't in school yet, but the other students are also the same age, so they haven't accepted yet, so they don't have a bill from the school. Any thoughts on what that family should share as documentation?
Got it. So you can submit admission offers because obviously you're going to be in the same boat of having to decide at some point by May 1. So you don't have the admission offer is appropriate, and even the other child's financial aid offer can be worth including. You're not going to have a tuition bill until August, September, and then by that point, the
This has all
both
been
students are
decided, right?
everything will have been decided exactly, and both students will be enrolling in college. But an admission decision is appropriate to include.
What about if somebody has gotten both merit and need-based aid, and they might want to be appealing both? How should they handle it in terms of, it should be one letter? Who do they write
Mhm.
to? And do they let the other kind of person know that they've gotten need-based aid or a merit scholarship as well?
Yeah. So, and I think this is where that that net cost comes into play, right? So when thinking about what options are worth appealing and how does that ultimately play out, both in terms of grant money and need-based aid that you receive. Ultimately, all of it is, sorry, merit funds or need-based scholarship. All of it, if I just scroll back um, here, right? If we just look at this for an example, that'll all be included in the grant that you see here. So total cost, then you can include need and merit scholarships in the grants. If there's any amount of loans, ultimately, again, you want to pay attention to the need, what the amount you pay to the remaining here, the net cost that's on the right side of the screen here. So however a school may go about filling the need that you have. Again, some schools have more institutional need-based financial aid programs. Maybe their budgets are higher for their financial aid programs. Maybe some schools have higher merit scholarship programs because that's supported by the university. wherever the funding comes from, you should appeal for both. But ultimately, comparing the net cost, the amount that you pay, is going to be the key here.
Somebody was asking about medical expenses and how to really document that. Like, what's the best documentation to share?
Yeah, so I would encourage you to compile them together and submit them as like a PDF, a compiled PDF. Make it easy in one document so that aid offices aren't opening like 10 different attachments. The easier you can make it for them, the quicker they'll be able to review everything. And it's just a nice service to do on behalf of the financial officer who's reviewing this appeal. So compiling everything, you can paste the images into a Word doc or PDF, turn it into a PDF, do it in Canva, whatever platform you want to use to create this. But it would just be really easy to submit a complete PDF with all of those materials so that someone can look and say, okay, again, it can vary. You may have just one bill from the hospital that you had to pay out of pocket. But in the case of chronic conditions, right, if you have 15 different receipts over the last 6 months, then that's the situation that I was describing where you want to bring it all together in one cohesive document.
Here's a good question that many people might have thought about or have considered. Somebody's saying the school that they have an offer from, the student has an offer from, puts a limit on the number of letters of recommendations, but they're asking, is it worth sending a new or another letter of recommendation as part of the merit appeal?
As part of the merit appeal, I've not heard of that.
Hmm.
That's generally helpful if a student is waitlisted for the admissions process. Again, if they've admitted you, they know you're a great student already. And the likelihood of a letter of recommendation influencing that is um, less promising, just for, to completely, not to take anything away from the great qualitative information that you provide. But colleges respond more to, maybe you have a really, really strong GPA because schools will publish their average GPA, their average test scores. They want to look good for future prospective students. So the factors that are public metrics work well in terms of any updates there. But that's to say, a letter of recommendation is great for the admissions process. It's great for waitlisted students who may need, for whom another perspective can add to their candidacy, but it's less common to use that for appealing aid.
Here's a good question. We've talked a lot about if there's been a change in financial circumstances, a little bit more like related to employment, income. Um, but somebody's saying, well, what if their assets dramatically declined because they had a major loss, or they had, I guess, they had a major expense that they had to pay for, and it just really reduced their assets. Is that something that they can use for an appeal?
It will depend. So here, I'll just go back. Where was that? So it will depend. Now, if you have savings and you you have like a huge leak in your roof or like a tree falls on your roof, and for some, maybe you don't have the insurance to cover it, or you still have to pay some level of out-of-pocket expenses. Um, uh, just a question that came in recently was that we received was like if your car breaks down and either you have like a fairly substantial bill from the mechanic or you just need to get a new car entirely. Again, these are circumstances that can be reason to appeal, but it varies. Now, a significant drop in any kind of investing assets, or let's use cryptocurrency as an example because cryptocurrency is really volatile. If the value of your cryptocurrency investments suddenly goes to zero, hope it doesn't happen for you, but let's just say it just completely tanks and goes to zero. That is not going to be a reason to appeal, unfortunately. That is just the inherent risk that you take on by investing in a volatile asset. Um, Now, when I mentioned about the home, for example, or the car. If you can state that your vehicle was your primary mode of transportation, it's the way you get to work, and it just, it died and you need to get a new car, that can potentially be a reason. If you have out-of-pocket expenses for something that happened in your home, and it's truly a need, then yes, that can count. If you decide to do a home renovation, right, just because you want to, that's not going to count. If your stock portfolio has declined 50% or whatever, enter X amount percentage, then that's not a valid reason to appeal, unfortunately. So while I certainly sympathize with the loss that comes with that, for the purpose of appealing aid, colleges will not grant additional aid because of dramatic decreases in assets. Now, again, if you've used like your savings account that you have to pay for the bills, the contractor to patch up your roof because the tree fell on your house and your insurance didn't cover it, then yeah, then you have a dramatic drop in savings and you want to notify. You want to notify in those instances.
Somebody is saying that they remarried and the FAFSA used their husband's income, but they're the only parent who is providing for their son's education. Can they appeal?
Yes. So I'd have to know a little, I can go through the scenario, but I'd have to know a little bit more about the exact situation. So if you were married in 2024 and that income was used on the FAFSA. Now, again, in the example that we shared, if there's been a change in marital status, a separation or a divorce, then that is important to notify, because for the FAFSA specifically, I'm not talking about the CSS here, for the FAFSA specifically, then only one parent is going to be the parent of record for FAFSA. And so only one parent is expected to contribute at the end in that case. It'll be the parent, and I actually did see this question in the chat as well a little bit earlier. It will be the parent who provides more than 50% of the financial costs for the child over the last 12 months. Now, again, if it's been a more recent change, then it can be with no, since the situation has changed. But within the last 12 months, who provides more than 50% financial support. This does not mean who the child lives with. So it's not automatically that scenario. It's who provides 50.1% of the child's financial costs. And so if there is a change, then that is the primary determinant. So let's say parent one is the parent that the child lives with, but parent two, and now they're separated, right? But parent two is the one who provides more financial support. Now, the Department of Ed has a really helpful tool on this. It's actually, we talk about it in our FAFSA webinar. And so it has a great decision tree where you input some information and it'll tell you exactly who should be submitting the FAFSA. So in the case of parent one, parent one, the child is living with them, parent two provides more than 50%. In this case, parent two is going to be the parent of record for the FAFSA. So only that parent's info is included. It doesn't matter at all if parent one is remarried or anything like that, because they're not included at all. Now, distinction here is, let's say parent one is the one who provides more than 50% and the child lives with that parent. Then they are the parent of record, not parent two. Now, if parent one has remarried, then at that point, both the parent one and new spouse's information is included. So again, a little bit, I hope that wasn't too much in the weeds, but happy to share more if there's further questions.
A few people have asked this. Been your experience if people do appeal and they don't hear back before May 1st?
Great question. Reach out to the financial office, and generally I would say give them about 2 weeks to get back to you, because this is a really busy time. They're reviewing appeals. Schools really should be getting back to you before the common reply date. If they're not, then you have I don't want to say full reign to go. Don't bother them too much, but realistically, you want to send them a reminder email. You want to see if you've submitted appropriately. Maybe the school requires you to submit through their portal instead of through email, because email can get lost really easily, or they're not even checking the email. So make sure. And then if you've double checked everything, call the office. Let them know it's been 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and the decision, the financial aid offer is going to be really important in your decision-making process. Because of course you may have other offers and you have to compare appropriately before the May 1 deadline.
This is a good question. What if, what's the best way of handling if a school has an ultimatum that a student has to accept by a certain date, which is before May 1st?
Yeah, that's a tricky situation. I would want to, I mean, if this happens, I'd actually want to know about it.
Are they,
So
and I hate to say the word, but I'm not, are they really allowed to do that? I mean, they,
that's the part where I'm not sure.
yeah, I'm not quite
So
sure that colleges are these days. They can
it's
put
not
in,
good practice
right,
at
they can
all.
put in dates like you need to, if you want a certain housing,
Yeah.
and that's usually like their trick of what they do. I personally haven't had a school say you had to accept before May 1st but who knows these days? There's a lot of new things happening. Um,
Yeah. So I have not heard of that happening. But again, to your point you just made, like, is this another can of worms that's now suddenly being opened? I think
right.
whether it's a requirement or a strong push can be important to decipher between. Um, but if you have, if that is the case, then you can work with other aid offices at other schools. If you're really between two or three and say, hey, this school is imposing some kind of deadline on me, I would really love to have, if you're able to prioritize my financial aid review so I can make the best decision, then they may, you know, the second university may be able to prioritize it so they get your decision in time.
Um, okay, let me just going through. Uh, I mean, we get this question a lot. It's a little bit not necessarily related to appeals, but I think we can answer it. This is for divorced families. Does it matter which parent claims the child on their taxes as to which parent should be filling out the FAFSA?
Uh, it's the parent who's going to be who pays
Right.
more than
It doesn't go by who claims them on their taxes.
correct.
So
Mhm.
this is Bridget is sharing in the chat that it was Delaware State that required acceptances by March 15th and rescinded admissions for those who didn't commit.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna
We're
look
going to
into that.
follow up on that.
I
Yeah.
see a couple other universities listed here, so I'm gonna
Oh,
look into
yeah.
those.
University of Utah required PFA major to accept. Wow. Okay.
That is
Oh,
not good. That is not best practice at all. Now, again, if colleges choose to abide by those, it's clearly their choice, and they're not doing so, which is really disheartening to see.
mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thank you, Eddie. Great information. I think we answered a ton of questions. I will go through and see if there's any like really big topics that we missed, but hopefully families got a sense of what to do in terms of appealing. We will send out a link to the recording. We will send out a link to all the tools mentioned. And let's say this is March 19th. So there's definitely enough time for people to be writing their appeals. And again, I always go into the philosophy of there's no harm. So let's give it a try and see what happens because even if they give you an extra $1,000 for merit, that's $4,000 for
Mhm.
4 years. So um, it's worth trying. And also, please sign up for Juno. We will have a few other webinars with Juno to talk specifically about the loan process. Um, we have been partnering with Juno for, I think this might be our 6th year. So I just want to share that to say that, I think that they're a great company. We've been working for them with all these years. We have had a ton of families that join Juno and, through the loan process end up comparing other lenders' loans with the negotiated rates that Juno can provide. So it's there again, this is one of those things. There is no harm in joining, and there is no harm if you have to, if you end up needing a loan to go and compare your rate with Juno. So it's just a great option out there to make sure that you're getting the best rate because that's what we want for everyone. Okay, thank you everyone, and reach out if you've got questions. Juno is great about spending time on the phone, on email to provide support, and we wish everyone the best.
Thank you so
Okay,
much, everyone, for joining.
thank you. Bye.